Hello, Keith Rucker here at VintageMachinery.org. Guys, today I think I'm going to start trying to put back at least some of the pieces and parts off of my Seller's drill grinder that we disassembled recently. I had some help here in the shop. Keith Hubbard came up and was here for a couple of days, as well as E. Hong here in Tifton, a little local knife maker. He came over and both of them kind of pitched in, and we tried to make a short work out of this as we can. The disassembly usually goes pretty quick and easy. The fun part is getting it cleaned up and ready for painting and so forth like that. And that's where the grunt work really comes in, and that's where it was really nice to have some extra hands here in the shop, particularly while I'm still kind of recovering from my hand injury where I broke my hand a couple of weeks ago or fractured it. It's doing much better, and I'm able to kind of pretty much use it now, although it is still a little sore. But with them in here in the shop helping me, things went along really quickly. Didn't really do a whole lot of video. I got a little bit of video. I was cleaning these things up, but I did, before I kind of get into this, want to talk about the process that I use for cleaning up castings and parts when I'm doing machinery restoration. And there is no one-size-fits-all solution. There is no deep, dark secret that just makes it super simple. I use a variety of tactics and a variety of different things, kind of depending on the part and depending on the situation to make it go easy. So first off, I'll just mention is sandblasting. Sandblasting is a good way to get stuff cleaned up. It can be, I try to avoid sandblasting on machine surfaces. If it's just a rough casting or something, yeah, the sandblasting's great. It'll knock it off. A lot of times for parts, I got a sandblasting service. It's about 45 miles from me, but for bigger machines and stuff, sometimes I'll take them down there and just let them sandblast. It's cheaper for me to just pay them to do it. They've got the professional equipment to do it. But I do have a blasting cabinet here in my shop, and for smaller parts and whatever, it is fairly convenient. Just take it back there, put it in the blasting cabinet and sandblasting. And we did that on some of these parts here. I think we all took turns in the blasting cabinet at some point or another, blasting away at parts and kind of getting them cleaned up. It really is aggressive. If you got a lot of rust or a lot of paint or whatever, it'll take it off in a hurry. Short of sandblasting, probably my next go-to thing is just using wire wheels. And I use these mostly on grinders, and I've got different sizes and different types. This is a twisted knot wire wheel here. Kind of a flat type. This is my preferred type. It kind of, if you come in here and just kind of put that directly in there, it will really strip stuff off in a hurry and does a good job. I also keep some cup type wheels around. These cup type wheels are really handy. In some places you just can't get the twisted knot into, but you can get the cup wheel into. I find the cup wheels are not quite as aggressive. They tend to work a little bit slower, but sometimes that can be an advantage to you. Bar wheels as well. I've got some of these little small cup wheels that just fit into a hex mount or whatever. I got this in just my driver. But this right here will get down in some little small places that you can't get some of these other ones into. These work really handy. And needle scaling, that's another thing that I use a lot. This is a air-powered tool that basically has these little hardened prongs in there, and it just jabs them back and forth. And this thing is amazing, particularly in tight places where you can't get a wire wheel, up in a corner or something like that. You can get this in here. This is an air-powered tool, and it just kind of chips away at the rust, the paint, and whatever, and it does a really good job. It is a little bit slower than the wire wheels and the sandblasting, but again, in those little hard-to-reach areas, really, really handy tool called a needle scaler. I've got a nice one here made by Ingersoll Rand, a professional grade one that has held up very well, and it is a favorite tool for sure. I also will use a wire wheel on a bench grinder, particularly on smaller parts, that you can take the part to the grinder. You can just stand there, and a lot of times it's a little bit easier just moving the part around on the wire wheel rather than trying to attack it with an angle grinder. So anyway, that's kind of my process for getting things cleaned up, and it is just, it's dirty work. when we were in here in the shop, it was cold the day we were doing it. I like to do it outside if I can, but we literally had some snow last week, and there was still snow on the ground. So we did it in the shop. It made a huge mess. You know, we can clean it up, but I prefer doing it outdoors if at all possible. Another thing is whenever you're doing this is PPE, personal protective equipment. Always wear a respirator or a dust mask. You never know whether you're using lead-based paint or not. I just always assume that I am, and I try to keep from breathing that stuff as much as I possibly can. And then I try to sweep everything up and just dispose of it rather than sweeping it out in the yard or something where it could potentially contaminate the yard outside. Also, we'll wear, aprons, whatever. Gloves is one of those things. Some people say don't wear gloves around an angle grinder, and I tend to agree with you, but these things here these wire wheels can really be aggressive. I like to wear a set of leather gloves or something while I'm doing it because I have eaten my hands up by mistake before on multiple occasions, and even wear long sleeves to protect yourself just to kind of keep those things off of you. Again, by the book, it says not to wear gloves. I tend to do because that leather is going to protect my skin, and yeah, you take the risk of it catching or whatever, but I find that that rash that it leaves when that wire wheel hits you is a lot more common than it catching a glove or something. So if you're not comfortable with that, don't do it. But I'm just telling you that's what I do. Also, face protection. I will wear a face shield, safety glasses at a minimum, but I really like to wear some type of face shield while I'm doing this. These wire wheels in this will come flying out at you. If you're wearing short sleeves or whatever, there's a lot of times that you'll feel a pin prick you, and you've literally got a piece of the wire that has broken off that thing and is just stabbed into you. You do not want one of those in your eye. So I just wear a full face shield typically whenever I'm running one of these wire wheels. In fact, let me show you this one I just got. I'll show you a couple of different types that I use. So, just a standard old face shield like this works really, really good. And this is what I have traditionally used. I probably got half a dozen of these things laying around the shop, particularly when I have people coming over and helping me. I just recently picked up this one right here, which is almost kind of like a little welding hood, but it just has a face piece in here. It also has room up underneath it where you can wear a respirator up underneath this thing and it doesn't get into your way. So it's got a little bit more room up in the front. I just picked this up. I can't remember, BA. I can't remember who that is, but anyway, I saw this in another YouTuber's video recently, and I said, it looks pretty interesting. So I picked one of these things up, and so far I really like it. I really like it. It's got the nice little headband on it that you can tighten up kind of like you do a welding helmet. So you stick this thing on and just tighten it up in the back. A lot more comfortable and a lot better than some of these styles here. So anyway, something, just get yourself a good face mask, eye protection, face protection while you're running these wire wheels. So as far as paint goes, I've talked about before, I'm really not set up with a spray system for painting paint in here. It just makes too big of a mess. I don't really have an area curtained off for it, and to be honest with you, I'm just not very good with a spray gun either. A little bit of practice would probably help. I tend to use either a paintbrush or rattle cans when I'm painting machines, particularly when you're dealing with raw castings. My personal experience is really a paintbrush does a really good job, and if I do spray paint it, I usually use the rattle cans. And I know a lot of people again will tell me that's probably not the best, but that's what I do, and I've had good luck with it. I like to use an enamel paint on machinery. The enamel paint seems to hold up well. That was what was used a lot originally. And Rust-Oleum is a enamel type paint, and in my opinion, this has traditionally been a good paint. I do use a lot of the stuff in the can as well. When I went up to Lowe's the other day looking for a color to paint this machine was originally kind of a green color. And I saw this particular one here. It's called Earthy Green, Satin Earthy Green. I hadn't ever seen it before, and it was actually a pretty close match to the green that this was originally. So I just picked up a couple of cans of this, and this is what we painted it with. And I'm pretty happy with it. I kind of like the color. I think it looks pretty good. Some people don't like green machines. I kind of like green. It just kind of depends on your personal preference. But anyway, I've never used this particular paint. I will say again on castings, when you're painting rough cast iron, I like to use either a satin color or a semi-gloss color rather than a gloss. The gloss tends to kind of show those imperfections in that surface a little bit more. And on a rough casting, unless you want to get out the Bondo and start sanding it, which I really don't like doing unless I just have to, I just go with a semi-gloss or a satin finish, and it seems to give it a little bit of a shine, but not really just show every little imperfection in that rough casting. If it's sheet metal or something like that, or a gloss looks really nice, but or something that's been sanded down or whatever. But on rougher textured surfaces, I like the satin or the semi-gloss. So I'm going to start by pulling off the areas that we masked off. When we're painting, you don't really want to paint some of these machine surfaces that two parts are going to mate up against or whatever. And we just used some painter's tape and masked it all off before we sprayed it. So let me go ahead and try to get some of this, get all my masking tape off of this before we get too deep into this. I'm going to start by getting this casting here, that the grindstone end that rocks back and forth on, pivots back and forth on, done. When we took this apart though, there's a shaft that goes up through this, and this thing was super, super tight on the inside. We had to do a lot of pounding. I actually had to heat this up with the torch just to get that rod to come out. I want to try to open it up just a little bit. I don't want to try to machine it or anything, but what I'm going to do is just use some emery cloth and get up in there. And I'm using a really simple tool here. This is just a piece of 1/4-inch rod that I put in an angle grinder. You can do this with an air-powered one. This happens to be a battery-powered one. And up here at the top, I just took you can take a hacksaw. I did this on my bandsaw. Just make a little slot in there. And what you can do is take some emery cloth. I just take a piece, fold it over in half, put it up on this little slot. Now I've got a flap wheel that I can put up inside of this hole and kind of run that around and clean that up. And typically what I will do when I'm doing this is I'll kind of roll it up, kind of like such, get it up into the bore, and then just start working in there to polish that out a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to do to try to make this go a little bit easier is I want to warm this casting up, and I've just got a heat gun here. When I got it off, I used a torch, but obviously I don't want to put the torch on it now. That's going to mess up my paint job. So just put a little bit of heat in there. What that should do is expand the size of that board just a little bit and hopefully allow that shaft to go through there. And then when it cools down, it'll shrink back down to size. All I'm probably getting is maybe a half a thou or a thou out of this in diameter, but that can make a big difference if you've got an interference fit. So let's warm her up. I turned my part around where I could access it a little bit easier. Before we put this piece in, there's this lever that fits in here, and it needs to go on before the other part goes on, or it just won't fit very well. And basically what this is a counterweight, hangs off the back of this, and it just applies pressure to that piece that's in there and keeps it kind of pressed in. So we'll kind of put that up. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and bring over the casting. I've got it on my gantry crane here, suspended up just to make life a little bit easier. There we go. That's kind of where it goes. And I need to put a little pressure in there so that I can have something to press against. So I'm just going to take a little piece of plywood. Sorry, I'm getting in front of the camera there. Take a piece of plywood and kind of put back here behind this. I'm going to have to notch that out a little bit. Let me go cut that out real quick on the bandsaw. All right, I think that'll give me some better clearance. I think my whole casting needs to come down just a little bit. All right, that's pretty good right there. All right, I'm going to let that sit there and run for 5 or 10 minutes and just get that thing good and warm and hot. Had it up to about 160 degrees a while ago. It cooled down a little bit while I was setting up, but anyway, that should help. I'm going to take a lead hammer and see if I can drive this in. And it is going pretty good right now. Yeah, it's going real good. I'll probably have to pull my piece of plywood out here. Right, we're up to the front shaft now. Let me get it lined up. I think we can take this out of the way. It seems to be pretty loose now. And I will tell you there's some holes drilled over here that the set screws will fit into. I need to get those lined up. Get a flashlight and see where I'm at. I'm just looking down the holes where the set screws go in, and I got maybe between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. It's probably good, right? That's perfect. All right, I can tighten those set screws up, and that went together a lot easier than it came apart. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, it wasn't very evident in the previous video of how hard this shaft was to get out. I was getting kind of low on time, and I just kind of showed the highlights there, just kind of banging on a little bit. We beat on this thing for a long time. I had to take a torch and heat up the bottom. It really moved slow, but opening up those holes just a little bit with that emery cloth, and I will also say that I took the shaft over to the lathe and I just sanded on it, polished it a little bit with emery cloth, and it went together very nice. It was still a tight fit, but it just hammered right in. It's perfect like it is right now, I do believe. So anyway, there's 2 set screws that go in here, and there's 2 little drilled places in the shaft to receive these set screws. I have all that lined up, and we're going to go ahead and get these tightened down and get that put in place. All right, that one is in. Should have put a little Loctite on those, but I honestly don't think it's going to matter. Very good. Now this is designed to pivot back and forth, and it also slides in and out. There's that piece back there on the other side that puts pressure against it with the counterweight on it, so that it's always kind of pushing it in like such. And then there's a screw in the inside that pushes it out, but you always have this downward pressure from the counterweight right here holding it in. So we got that together. Good job. Next thing I want to work on here is this linkage arm that basically causes that whole pivoting part that we were working on just a minute ago to pivot back and forth. There's a handle on the front of the machine, and this basically goes from the front to the back, and there's a arm here that goes over to some linkages and what have you. And I showed this when we took it apart. We got a bronze bushing in this part up here. This shaft fits through this. This is a 3/4 inch diameter shaft, as you can see here. Just a hair undersized, 2/1000ths. But when you get down here to the middle, I mean, we're 40 thousandths small, and there's a bronze bushing that this runs in, and it is excessively worn. Even on the side up here, this is a lot snugger, but even up here, it's wobbling around too much. So we need to replace the bronze bushing, and we also need to make a new one of these arms here to go in. And additionally, there's these little pins on the other end that connect it to that part. And you can see it is very, very worn in there. We're going to make some new of these. These are some linkage arms. See, a couple of these are a little bit oblong. I need to look at that. I may need to bore those out and put a bushing in those as well. So this is probably the worst worn part on the whole machine, and we're going to take care of it. Now, as far as the bushing goes, the bushing is 1 inch in diameter. It's 3/4 inches internal. And I dug around. I actually have a bunch of bronze bushings, and I found one that is 1 inch on the OD, 3/4 ID, and it's the right length. I mean, everything, this is just right out of a box of bronze bushings that I picked up at a sale many, many years ago. So I didn't have to order one of those, but I do need to press the old one out and then press this one back in, and I think we'll be fine to go there. So let's go over to the press and see if we can press that out. I'm going to try it on the arbor press. We may have to go to the hydraulic press depending on how tight that is. Let's give this a try. I'm going to spin my daisy plate around here. That should allow this piece to fit up in there. I found a piece of stock over in my scrap pile that was just a little under 1 inch, and I just turned down on the end. It already had an area turned down. I had to turn down a little bit more, but longer than it needs to be. But that will line up in that hole, and that should clear the outside and allow me to press that out. So we'll just drop this down, and let's see if the press here will, yeah, it's going to push it right out. I figured it would. Most of those bushings aren't that tight. So there we go. You can see that came right out. There is an oil hole there, so we can probably just drill it out after we press it in. That way we don't have to worry about trying to line it up. So let me get the new bushing and we'll press it in. So in this case, I just want to press it down until it's just flush coming out the other end. So we'll just press it down right there, and when it bottoms out, it'll stop. And that should just press right in there. There we go. All done. So that's got the new bushing in. Well, I noticed on these linkage rods that I had one that was big and one that was small. And wasn't quite sure what was going on, but when I went to take off the end, I realized that what we've got is there's actually a bronze bushing that has been pressed down inside of these that ride on these bars. And one of them is extremely loose. However, again, I think we're going to replace that. I dug around in my bearing bush, my box over there, and I have some bronze bushings here. This is 3/4 inch OD with 1/2 inch ID. I can just cut these to length and press a new one in there. I'm going to press this one out and replace it, and that'll fit up on the end. And I think because these top ones are kind of oblong from where they've worn, that's where these pins fit in there, and they just wore out. I think I'm going to bore those out to 3/4 inch diameter, and we'll just press some bronze bushings in those as well. Additionally, I need to remake this part because, like we said a while ago, the center part is worn down significantly. So I think what I want to do first is go over here to the lathe. I've got some 3/4 inch stock back there, and we'll just make a new connecting rod here. We'll just cut off the ends and thread those like they need to be, cut that out and thread them out. And then we'll take these to the mill machine, bore those out, and press in new bushings on those connecting rods, and should be ready to go back together. Oh, well, I got to make some new pins there too, but that's just super simple. So we need to face the end, turn it down to 1/2 inch, 7/8 inch deep. So let's get that knocked out real quick and thread that in. Start by facing. The total length of this was 10 inches. I just cut it out on the bandsaw. I'm going to mark that as my 0. On my Z-axis, we'll go to 7/8, which is 0.875. Right there. Turn that down to 1/2 inch. You get this diameter, and I'll put it in the digital readout, and we can go on. So that's measuring 656. We'll do another 100 thou, and then we'll clean it up. everything slowed down a little bit here. I'm going to touch off there. All right. We'll do about 15 thousandths on that cut. I only need to thread a little over half of that length. We'll just stop about right there and we'll knock it out. All right, I'm going to flip this thing around. We're going to do the exact same thing to the other side, and we'll have this part knocked out. I'm back over the arbor press. I did off camera. I just cut those bushings to length and faced them off on the lathe real quick. Wasn't just a really quick operation. I got one of them that's still in here. The other one is already out. I'm just going to take the arbor press here and press that old bushing out, and then we'll come back and put the new ones in. So it shouldn't take much to push that out. There we go. And again, I'm going to turn my plate just a little bit. See, I think I go this way. That other side's got a little bit of a bevel to it. And we'll just press those right in. Well, guys, I just ended up just taking a hammer. And once it got lined up and going, it just popped right into place. And I unfortunately didn't catch it on camera, but that's what I did. And we got that side done. Now what I think I need to do is actually bore this other side out so that I can put bushings in those. I don't know if you can tell or not, but these are been worn oblong and they need to have bushings in them as well. So we'll just go ahead. I got 2 more bushings already made and get those bored out and ready to roll. So to bore these, I'm going to be real lazy, and instead of setting up a boring head or anything like that, I'm just going to use a 3/4 inch end mill and just punch right down through it. At least that's my plan. Let's see how it goes. And I'm just going to raise the table up, and hopefully that'll go right through there. I just used a rule to kind of get it lined up, and we're just kind of cutting that outside edge to 3/4 of an inch. And we are all the way through. Come back out. And that should do that side. Do the same thing on the other one. All right, let's see how things go together here. So we've got the new bushing inside of here. We got our new rod that goes inside of that. And that's a nice snug fit. I do still need to drill out my oil hole there. I'll do that here in just a minute. Just trying everything out. Then I got these little arms. These will, that one wants to be a little bit stubborn going up on there. Yeah, that side fits up on there a little bit better for some reason. We'll just go with that. Same thing over here. That one goes on. And then there's a couple of nuts that go on the end. Tighten that all up, and I'm not going to tighten it up right now, but kind of just checking things out. So that turns freely. Those turn freely on the arm. The final thing we need to do here is make some new pins that will go end up here. This is just 1/2 inch stock. It's got a couple of holes in it for some cotter pins. Let me go see if I can find some 1/2 inch stock, and nothing fancy here. I'll just cut them to length and drill a couple of holes in them, and those should be done. And 2 new pins, just some 1/2 inch stock, some 1/8 inch holes through there for the cotter pins. And those should work just fine. Man, that's nice and snug. That's just like we like it. Let's go put all this together. So step 1, we'll put our link arm in here. A little tight going in, but once we got it in, it feels real good. We got grease zerks on for both sides to grease that with. I did drill this hole through, so we've got that done. Let me see if I can find my piece that goes on the other side here, and we'll go ahead and get that put in place. So on this side, we have a handle, or a lever, I guess you'd say, that fits up on this end, and that's what we control things with to move that back and forth, the wheel back and forth. See if I can bump that on. There's a key in it. I'm just trying to get this around to a place where it'll sit. All right, that's all good. So now let's work on our linkage. I'm going to start. There's a pin that goes through back here. There we go. Arm that goes in here. This is going to link up right here. Let me see how I'm going to do this. I'm going to have to knock the pin back out. I'm going to have to push them both in at the same time, I think. Let me do that real quick. Now we can push this back in. There we go. That's got them both in. I need to put my cotters in. I need to tighten up the nuts on the end. But you can see how that works, and there is no slopping that at all now. That's just like we need it. All right, let's tighten up these nuts on the end. And I think we'll have this put back together. And all right. Again, that is just a linkage to rotate that grinding wheel back and forth. And that is much better than it was. I still need to put a grease zerk back in here, and I'm going to get some new grease zerks and replace all of them on here, so I'm not going to worry about that right now. But that is all finished up. Well, very nice. This is coming along nicely. Like I said, we had all kinds of slop in this linkage before, but that is exactly like it's supposed to be. Very happy with how that turned out. I think we're going to call it quits for today on this. This is probably enough content for one video. We got plenty more work to do on this, putting this thing back together. I've still got to get all the tables and all that put back on. We've got to get the spindle put back in here with the bearings. My bearings, had to order a couple things. They should be here in the next couple of days, so we can probably get back onto that. I need to do a little bit of work on the part that rotates up on the top. That's going to probably be a video in itself, but it is coming along nicely. And this thing should be a lot tighter machine when we get through with it. Guys, with that, that's going to be a wrap. As always, thanks for watching. Please do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Those thumbs up and comments are always greatly appreciated. Hit that bell icon to get notifications when new videos are posted. And as always, a big, huge thank you to those who support the site financially through Patreon, PayPal, etc. It enables me to take the time to shoot these videos, do all the editing and all the work that goes on behind the scenes besides the work being done in the shop that it takes to put together a YouTube video and channel and content and bring it to you guys. Guys, with that, we're going to get out of here. We'll catch you on the next video again. As always, thanks for watching.